A poor little girl walks into a bakery and asks a billionaire, "Can I trade my shoes for a loaf of bread? My brother is crying because he's hungry." The billionaire's answer will surprise you. The aroma of freshly baked bread filled the air at Laurent's bakery, blending with the gentle smell of gourmet coffee and light hints of vanilla. Michael Carter straightened the knot of his navy blue tie while waiting in line, glancing absently at his gold watch, the kind of luxury he rarely allowed himself to waste. "The usual, Mr. Carter?" asked the attendant with a practiced smile. Michael nodded without making eye contact, his eyes fixed on his smartphone. Another day, another meeting, another multi-million-dollar deal to close before lunch. His routine had been predictable for years, and he liked it that way. Predictability meant control. The bakery was his single daily indulgence. Located far from his office in the financial district, it was worth the morning detour. Not that he particularly appreciated the taste, food was merely fuel. What drew him was the exclusive atmosphere, the select clientele, the comfort of the familiar. "Your almond croissant and coffee, sir." The attendant placed the tray on the Italian marble counter. It was then that the little bell above the door chimed, letting a rush of chilly autumn air into the carefully climate-controlled environment. Michael wouldn't have noticed if not for the sudden silence that fell over the place. He turned instinctively. A small girl, maybe 5 years old, dusty blonde hair tangled and unkempt, entered timidly. Her once pink dress showed obvious marks of dirt and long-term wear. She surveyed the surroundings with large, alert eyes, looking even smaller under the high ceiling and the elegant chandeliers. The customers exchanged uneasy glances. The manager moved quickly toward the little intruder, but the girl was faster. Before anyone could intercept her, she walked straight up to Michael. "Sir," her voice was clear, with a slight accent he couldn't place. "Can I ask you a question?" Michael felt the manager's gaze, silently asking his permission to intervene. He hesitated, intrigued by the confidence in the child's eyes. "What do you want?" he asked, more harshly than he intended. The girl did not back away. Instead, she held something in her small hands and offered it to him. It was a worn child's shoe, its laces nearly disintegrated. "Can I trade shoe for bread? My brother is crying hungry," she said, with neither embarrassment nor shame. "My brother Noah is really hungry. He's only 3. Time seemed to freeze. Michael felt the weight of all the other customers' eyes on him, some curious, some visibly uncomfortable with the scene. "Where are your parents?" he asked, bending down slightly. "They went away," the girl replied with a simplicity that made the tragedy even more painful. "But I take care of Noah now." Michael felt something strange in his chest, a forgotten sensation. The girl's eyes, blue like a summer sky, held a surprising mix of vulnerability and strength. Here was a child offering her last valuable possession for food. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice softer now. "Emma," she replied, still holding out the worn shoe. A sudden flash crossed Michael's mind, a woman's face, a smile, a promise made long ago. Emma, the same name. "So you know, this shoe isn't worth much," he said, trying to sound practical, trying to ignore the tightness in his throat. "It's the last one that still fits me," Emma explained with a child's unwavering logic. "And there's a nice drawing inside. See?" She turned the shoe, revealing a little sun drawn on the insole, almost erased by wear. That was when Michael realized that his own handmade Italian shoes had cost more than many families spent on food in an entire month. "The manager is going to call social services," the attendant whispered, leaning discreetly toward him. Michael felt a sudden impulse. "How much bread do you need?" Emma's eyes lit up. "Just a big piece for us to share. Noah is small, but he eats a lot." He pulled out his wallet from the inner pocket of his jacket and took out several high-value bills. "Give me a bag of assorted bread," he instructed the attendant, "and add some of those chocolate cakes, too." The attendant nodded, moving quickly. Emma watched the transaction in fascination, still holding out her shoe as payment. "Keep it," Michael said, gently pushing her hand away. "You'll need it in this cold weather." When the bag was handed over, he gave it to Emma, whose expression flickered between distrust and gratitude. "Thank you, sir." She clutched the bag to her chest as though it were a treasure. "Are you sure you don't want the shoe?" "I'm sure," he replied. Go feed your brother. Emma nodded solemnly and walked toward the door with an impressive dignity for someone so small. Before leaving, she turned one last time. God bless you, she said, words clearly borrowed from an older person, before disappearing through the door. The ambient hum of the bakery gradually returned. Michael picked up his now lukewarm coffee and croissant. When he bit into the pastry, he realized he could no longer taste it. What a sad situation, commented an older woman at the next table. Those street children. The city should do something. Michael nodded mechanically, but his mind was elsewhere. A memory, himself, not much older than Emma, holding his mother's hand as they counted coins to buy bread. Finishing his coffee quickly, he stepped out into the cold morning air. He needed to get to the office. He had an important meeting. The market waited for no one. Michael walked briskly, trying to erase the image of Emma's blue eyes from his mind. There were more important things to worry about, companies to run, money to make. But with every step, the heaviness in his chest seemed to grow. The offices of Carter Enterprises occupied the top 3 floors of the tallest building in the city. From his desk, Michael could see the urban skyline like a chessboard on which, over the years, he had strategically conquered each important piece. Mr. Carter, the merger documents need your signature, said his secretary, placing a folder on the glass table. Michael picked up the pen, but his fingers felt heavy. The morning meeting had been a success, yet another company absorbed into his empire. He should have felt satisfied. Is there a problem with the terms? His secretary asked, noticing his hesitation. No, Sue, everything's fine, he replied, signing quickly. But it wasn't fine. Since leaving the bakery, the image of the blue-eyed girl had haunted him. Emma and her invisible brother, Noah. Where were they sleeping? What would they eat once the bread was gone? Cancel my afternoon appointments, he said suddenly. The secretary stared at him, confused. Sir, you have a video conference with Tokyo at 4 and reschedule everything. Michael got up, grabbing his coat. Tell them something came up. In 15 years working for him, she had never seen him cancel meetings without a clear reason. Are you feeling all right, Mr. Carter? Perfectly, he replied, already heading to the door. I'll be back tomorrow. In the elevator, Michael closed his eyes. What was he doing? Why couldn't he simply ignore that child, the way he had ignored so many panhandlers on the streets over the years? The answer came in the form of a memory. He was 7, counting coins at a kitchen table with his sick mother. It's not enough for medicine and food, she would say. We'll have to choose. His driver was waiting at the building entrance, as always. Home, Mr. Carter. Michael hesitated. No, take me back to Laurent's bakery. The driver nodded without showing surprise, though it was the first time in years his boss had changed his routine. During the trip, Michael looked out the car's tinted window, watching the city gradually transform. Corporate buildings gave way to upscale residential areas, which in turn were replaced by more modest commercial districts. The car stopped in front of the bakery. Wait here, Michael ordered, quickly getting out. The bell announced his entrance, but this time he wasn't interested in the aromas or the refined ambience. His eyes scanned the place, looking for a small blonde figure. Can I help you, Mr. Carter? Asked the same attendant as in the morning. That girl, Michael said. Emma. Did she come back? The young man shook his head. No, sir. The manager said she'd call security if she appears again. Michael felt a stab of annoyance. Which way did you see her go when she left? I think she turned right, heading toward the park, the attendant answered. Looking uneasy under the interrogation, Michael left without ordering his usual. He walked quickly in the direction the attendant had indicated, arriving at a small park surrounded by old buildings. The benches were mostly occupied by senior citizens and a few nannies with small children. No sign of Emma or Noah. Frustrated, he kept walking, turning onto less maintained streets where the city showed its rougher side. He went into small corner stores asking about 2 children, a 5-year-old blonde girl and a little boy. No one seemed to have seen them, or if they had, they preferred not to get involved. After an hour of fruitless searching, Michael stopped at a corner. What was he doing, looking for street kids as if they were lost pets? There were agencies for that, established systems. He pulled out his phone and searched for nearby homeless shelters. A list came up, but something stopped him from calling. Emma had said she was taking care of her brother. Reporting them might mean separating them, placing them into the system. In the inner pocket of his coat, he found the card of a private investigator he'd once hired to do background checks on business partners. He dialed the number. "I need to find someone," he said abruptly when the man answered. "2 children, possibly homeless. A girl around 5 named Emma and a boy Noah, about 3. "Area?" asked the investigator, not questioning his motives. Michael gave the approximate location near the bakery and the nearby park. "How long will you need?" "With homeless kids, it can be tricky. They move around, hide. I'll need a few days, maybe." "You have until tomorrow morning," Michael said. "Money's not an issue. Use however many people you need." After hanging up, Michael took a deep breath. The sky was already darkening, and with the night came the chill of autumn. The thought of 2 small children facing the night's cold on the streets disturbed him deeply. At home, his dinner was served punctually by Margaret, his housekeeper of over 20 years. She noticed he barely touched the food. "Is something wrong with the salmon, sir?" she asked, concerned. Michael pushed the plate away. "I'm not hungry." Margaret, who had seen him grow from an ambitious young man into a ruthless billionaire, understood every nuance of his behavior. "Did something happen today?" He almost told her about Emma, about how her eyes reminded him of someone, about how her simple request had cracked something inside him, but the words wouldn't come. "Just tired," he said, getting up. "I'll be in my study." Upstairs, Michael entered his private office. Against the far wall stood a hidden safe, storing valuable documents and a few personal relics he rarely revisited. He entered the combination and opened the heavy door. In the back, beneath folders of contracts, there was a small wooden box. He removed it carefully, as if handling explosives. Sitting in his leather chair, Michael slowly opened the box. Inside, there was an old photograph, a young blonde woman holding a baby. On the back of the photo, a single line: "Emma and Michael, 1974. His mother. His middle name had been the same as hers. Next to the photo was a small, worn baby shoe, his first shoe, the only one his mother had managed to preserve before poverty forced them to give up almost everything. Michael closed his eyes, the memory now painfully vivid. His mother had worked 3 jobs to support them both, falling ill in the process. When he was 10, she passed away, leaving him to navigate the treacherous foster care system alone. His fortune, his empire, everything had been built so he would never again feel the powerlessness of poverty. So he would never again depend on the kindness of strangers, so he would never go hungry. And now a little Emma had appeared, offering a shoe for bread. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was the investigator. "I found something, Mr. Carter. Witnesses saw the children in an abandoned lot near the old train station. Seems there's a group of homeless folks sheltering there." Michael felt his heart pick up speed. "I'll be there first thing in the morning." Hanging up, he looked again at the small baby shoe in his hands. Tomorrow, he would find Emma and Noah. But then what? What would he do with 2 homeless kids? He had no answers, only the certainty that he could no longer pretend he hadn't seen them. Morning came under a cloudy, threatening sky. Michael dismissed his driver and drove himself to the abandoned train station. The place, once a symbol of progress, was now ringed by rusty fences and faded signs. A yellowed billboard advertised a future real estate venture that had never materialized. He parked his luxury car at a safe distance, not to avoid scratches, but so as not to frighten those he sought. The investigator waited on a corner, a middle-aged man with an unremarkable appearance and keen eyes. "Good morning, Mr. Carter." "This way." Michael followed him through a gap in the fence. The lot was filled with debris, weeds, and an occasional abandoned belongings. Improvised tents of tarp and cardboard formed a small camp beneath what was once the main platform. "They're over there," the investigator pointed discreetly. Beneath a tattered blanket, 2 small figures slept curled against each other. Emma lay protectively around her younger brother. Even from a distance, Michael could see how much the boy resembled her. Same blonde hair, though shorter and even more disheveled. "Are there more people around?" Michael asked, noting the quiet stillness of the place. Most leave early to beg or look for work, the investigator explained. The kids usually stay behind, watching out for each other. Michael approached slowly, trying not to startle them. Emma was the first to wake, her alert blue eyes instantly wide open. She pulled her brother closer instinctively. "Hello, Emma," Michael said, stopping a few steps away. The girl studied him warily before recognition lit her face. "Hi, you're the man from the bakery," she murmured, nudging her brother. "Noah, wake up." The boy opened his sleepy eyes. They were the same deep blue as his sister's, but larger, taking up much of his small, thin face. "How did you find us?" Emma asked, now on her feet, positioning herself protectively in front of her brother. "I asked around," Michael replied simply. "Did you eat last night?" Emma hesitated before answering. "We saved some of the bread for today." "I'm hungry," Noah murmured, his small voice hoarse, probably from disuse. Michael looked around at the precarious conditions. An empty bakery bag was neatly folded next to them, along with 2 plastic bottles half full of water. "I know a place that serves pancakes," he said. "Do you like pancakes?" Noah's eyes went wide, but Emma remained cautious. "Why are you doing this?" she asked directly. The question caught Michael off guard. Why indeed? He himself wasn't sure. "Because no one should go hungry," he finally said. "Especially children." Emma studied his face for a long moment, as though searching for any hint of deception. Finally, she nodded. "We need to take our stuff." Stuff was an exaggeration for the small bundle she quickly assembled, packing a few items into a faded child's backpack: the tattered blanket, a one-eyed teddy bear, a couple of clothing pieces, and a broken picture frame. "We're ready," Emma announced, holding her brother's hand. The investigator observed with curiosity. "Should I come along, Mr. Carter?" "That won't be necessary," Michael said, handing him a thick envelope. "Thank you for your efficiency." In the car, Emma and Noah sat in the back seat, tense and silent. Michael adjusted the rearview mirror to see them. "You need to put on your seatbelts," he said. Emma helped her brother before fastening her own, moving with a sad familiarity of adult responsibilities. The restaurant Michael chose wasn't luxurious, but was clean and welcoming, a family spot where they wouldn't draw too many stares. Still, as they walked in, he felt curious looks from other patrons, a man in an expensive suit accompanied by 2 clearly needy children. The waitress led them to a corner table, brought menus, and discreetly glanced at the children. "You can order whatever you want," Michael said. Noah stared at the colorful pictures with fascination. "Can I eat all that?" he asked, pointing to a plate stacked with pancakes. "Noah," Emma scolded him gently. "Don't be greedy." "It's all right," Michael assured him. "Order whatever you want, Noah." The boy grinned for the first time, revealing a missing front tooth. It lit up his entire face, transforming him from a sullen child into a normal 3-year-old. While they waited for the food, Michael tried to make conversation. "So, have you been staying in that place for long?" Emma shook her head. "Just a few weeks. Before that, we stayed at the park, but it got too cold at night. And before the park," the girl lowered her eyes, "we used to have a home." The food arrived, momentarily interrupting the conversation. Noah attacked his pancakes enthusiastically, while Emma ate more slowly, as if savoring every bite. "You don't have to eat so fast, Noah," she told him. "No one's going to take your plate." Michael felt a pang in his chest. He recognized that behavior, the fear that the food would be gone before the hunger passed. "There will be more if you want," he said gently. Emma looked up from her plate. "Why are you being nice to us?" Michael considered the question. "Hasn't anyone been nice to you before?" The girl's expression darkened. "Some people pretend to be nice at first." The implication hung heavy between them. Michael felt a mix of anger and sadness. "I'm not pretending, Emma. I just want to help." "Everybody wants something," she replied with a bitterness far too mature for her 5 years. "What happened to your parents?" Michael asked, changing the subject. Emma paused her eating, her eyes losing focus momentarily. "Mom got sick. Dad tried to take care of her, but there wasn't enough money for medicine. He worked all the time, but it wasn't enough." "Mom went away," Noah interrupted, his mouth sticky with maple syrup. "To heaven," Emma nodded sadly. "After that, Dad changed." He started drinking that stuff that makes people act weird. Alcohol, Michael muttered. Yeah. He lost his job. Then our house. He promised he would come get us when he found a new place, but... Her voice faltered. It's been a long time. How long? Michael asked gently. Emma shrugged. Lots of days. I can't count very well yet. Do you have any other relatives? Uncles, grandparents. We had Grandma, but she went to heaven too, Emma replied. Dad said it was just the four of us against the world. The simplicity of her answer masked a complex tragedy. Michael could imagine the father, desperate after losing his wife, succumbing to alcohol, losing everything, perhaps with the best intentions of returning for the kids, but never finding his way back. Do you have kids? Emma asked suddenly. No, Michael answered, surprised by the question. Why not? You seem old enough. Michael couldn't help a small smile at her bluntness. I never found the time, I guess. Or the right person. Our mom used to say kids are gifts, said Emma. But I guess some people don't like gifts. The observation hit him harder than he expected. How many times had he avoided serious relationships, citing his career as the priority? How many times had he found children noisy inconveniences in restaurants or on planes? Are you finished? He asked, noticing their empty plates. Noah nodded eagerly. Can we eat more? Emma looked at Michael, evaluating if the earlier offer was genuine. Sure, he said, signaling the waitress. And maybe afterward we can get you some new clothes. Emma's eyes widened. New clothes. And a warm bath, Michael added, if you want. The girl appeared momentarily overwhelmed by the offer. You won't take us to the police after? Not unless you want me to. We don't want that, Emma said quickly. They'll separate us. I promised Mom I'd always take care of Noah. Michael nodded, understanding. No one will separate you. After their second plate of pancakes, which Noah could barely finish, Michael took them to a department store. The sales clerk looked suspiciously at the disheveled kids, but her professionalism held as soon as Michael requested full outfits for both. Emma chose practical items, pants, t-shirts, a sturdy coat. For Noah, she picked out bright pieces that made him smile. Michael added socks, underwear, and pajamas to the pile, as well as new shoes to replace the ones they were wearing out. We can really keep all this? Emma asked, looking smaller than ever behind the pile of bags. Yes, it's all yours, Michael confirmed. In the car, Noah fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted by the emotional morning and with a full belly. Emma fought to keep her eyes open. Where are we going now? She asked drowsily. Michael hesitated. He hadn't planned beyond this point. Taking them to a hotel seemed impersonal, and returning them to the street was out of the question. We're going to my house, he decided. You can take a bath, rest, and then we'll figure out what's next. Michael's mansion was located on the outskirts of the city, inside a gated community overlooking a lake. As the electronic gate opened, Emma woke up and nudged her brother. Noah, look, she exclaimed, pointing at the huge house with manicured gardens. Do you live in a castle? Asked Noah, rubbing his sleepy eyes. Michael smiled. It's not a castle, just a house too big for one person. Margaret was waiting at the door, as always. Her usually composed expression faltered at the sight of two grubby children stepping out of her employer's car. Mr. Carter, she asked, confused. Margaret, these are Emma and Noah, Michael introduced. They'll be staying with us for a while. The housekeeper looked from the children to Michael, clearly expecting an explanation. When none came, she assumed her usual efficiency. Welcome, kids. Let's get you a warm bath. Emma gripped Noah's hand more tightly. Can we stay together? Margaret smiled kindly. Of course, dear. I'll show you where everything is. While the housekeeper led the children upstairs, Michael headed to his office, needing a moment to process his own actions. There was something impulsive, almost irrational, about what he was doing. In less than 48 hours, he had brought two unknown children into his home. Margaret returned an hour later, closing the office door behind her. They're bathing now, she reported. I put them in the guest room down the east hall. Michael nodded, grateful for her efficiency. Thank you, Margaret. May I ask what's going on? She inquired, sitting in the chair in front of his desk, a privilege only she was ever allowed. Michael recounted everything. The meeting in the bakery, the search, the children's story. Margaret listened in silence, her face showing growing compassion. "What do you plan to do with them, Michael?" she asked, using his first name as she did only in moments of deep familiarity. "I don't know," he admitted. "I can't send them back out on the street." Margaret studied him carefully. "There's something more, isn't there? Something about these particular children." Michael hesitated. Margaret had known him since his youth. She had been hired by his mentor when he got his first apartment. She had witnessed his rise, his obsession with success, his gradual transformation into a man who measured everything in monetary value. "She reminds me of my mother," he confessed. "Not just the name, but those eyes, the same determination." Margaret nodded, understanding. "I noticed too. And the boy has your eyes." Michael hadn't realized the resemblance, but now that Margaret mentioned it, he could see it. Noah's big blue eyes, though more innocent, had the same shape as his. "What should I do, Margaret?" It was a rare question coming from him, a man used to making decisions that affected thousands of lives without hesitation. "Start by feeding them and giving them a safe place to sleep," she answered with practical simplicity. "The rest will come naturally." When Michael went upstairs to see the children, he found them transformed by the bath. Emma's blonde hair, now clean, shone like gold under the warm light of the lamp. Noah looked like a different boy, his pink cheeks evident now that all the dirt had been washed away. Both wore new pajamas, far too big for their thin frames. They were sitting on the huge king-size bed, appearing tiny among the pillows. "This bed is bigger than our whole house used to be," Emma commented, bouncing lightly on the mattress. Noah laughed, bouncing higher. "It's soft like clouds." Michael smiled, leaning against the doorframe. "Did you like your bath?" "The water never got cold," Noah exclaimed, genuine wonder in his voice. The casual remark revealed so much about their former lives that Michael felt his throat tighten. "It'll never get cold here," he promised. "Can we really sleep in this bed?" Emma asked, still skeptical of their good fortune. "Of course. This room is yours while you're here." The girl looked around, evaluating the luxurious space. "How long are we going to stay?" It was the question Michael had been avoiding. "How long would you like to stay?" Emma glanced at her brother. "Can we stay until tomorrow?" "You can stay longer than that," Michael replied, "but we'll talk about it later. You must be tired now." Noah was already yawning, his eyelids heavy. Emma helped him slide under the blankets, naturally assuming the role of caretaker. "Can I talk to you a bit before I sleep?" Michael asked Emma. The girl hesitated, looking at Noah, who was almost asleep. "Will he be okay alone?" "We'll leave the door open, and we'll be right there on the balcony." The guest room's balcony overlooked the illuminated gardens and the lake in the distance. Emma curled up on a large chair, looking even smaller under the starry sky. "Your house is really pretty," she commented. "Thank you," Michael replied, sitting in the chair next to her, "but I didn't always live in a place like this." Emma looked at him curiously. "Where did you live before?" Michael gazed at the horizon. "When I was about your age, I lived in a tiny apartment with my mom. Sometimes we didn't have enough money for food." The girl's eyes widened at the revelation. "You were poor like us?" "Yes," he confirmed. "My mother got sick like yours, but I didn't have any siblings. When she died, I was left alone." "Who took care of you?" Michael smiled sadly. "Nobody, really. I went to an orphanage, then to foster homes. Some were good, some not so good. You didn't have a dad. He left before I was born." Emma processed this in silence. "So how did you get rich?" "I worked hard," Michael said. "Studied whenever I could. Got lucky a few times. Met people who helped me." "Our mom said hard work always pays off," Emma observed. "But Dad worked a lot and we still lost everything." The astute observation impressed him. "Sometimes it's not fair, Emma. Some people work their whole lives and never get enough. Others get luckier." "Were you lucky?" Michael considered his path. Sleepless nights, sacrifices, tough decisions, sometimes ruthless, that got him where he was. "I was lucky at some key moments," he admitted, "but I also made choices, some I regret now." "What kind of choices?" "I chose work over friends, money over time," he simplified decades of complex decisions. I thought if I had enough money, I'd never feel fear or hunger again. Emma nodded as if she perfectly understood, and did it work? You're not afraid of anything anymore. The question was too profound for her age. Michael realized that children who face hardship early develop an understanding of life many adults never attain. It worked for some fears, he answered honestly, but I discovered there are other fears money can't fix. Like what? Fear of being alone forever. Fear of never doing anything truly important. Emma looked at him with wise eyes. Taking care of someone is important. That's what I do for Noah. Michael felt something break inside him, a barrier he'd maintained for decades. Yes, Emma. That's very important. The girl yawned, exhaustion finally overcoming her curiosity. Michael led her back to bed, where she lay next to her sleeping brother. Did you know my mother's name was Emma too? Michael said, tucking her in. The girl smiled sleepily. Really? Was she nice? The nicest person I ever knew, he said, feeling a surge of emotion he had not allowed himself in a long time. Just like you. Emma closed her eyes, murmuring, Thanks for not sending us away today. You're safe here, Michael promised, watching her drift off. He stood there a long time, watching the two children sleep peacefully, maybe for the first time in a while. The quiet room echoed with possibilities he'd never considered before. Family, connection, a different kind of wealth. Leaving, he found Margaret in the hallway. They're asleep, he informed her. The housekeeper nodded, watching him with perceptive eyes. And how are you, Michael? He considered the question. Different, he finally replied. I feel different. Margaret smiled, as though witnessing something she'd long hoped for. I'll prepare breakfast for Ford then. Michael returned to his room, but sleep did not come easily. His mind replayed the conversation with Emma, the revelations he'd made, the truths he'd admitted not just to her but to himself. For decades, he had turned his pain into ambition, his loneliness into independence. He had built walls so high around himself that he'd forgotten how to look beyond them. Now, two children he had found by chance had cracked those walls, and through that opening something new and frightening was entering, the possibility of caring again. 2 weeks had passed since Emma and Noah arrived at the Carter mansion. A daily routine gradually took shape, like water finding its way between rocks. Margaret served as the anchor in this new dynamic, maintaining regular schedules for meals, baths, and rest periods. Michael tried to work from home whenever possible. Meetings he once considered indispensable were now delegated or conducted via video conference. His office, once an untouchable sanctuary, frequently had its door open for Noah's unexpected visits. He loved spinning in the leather chair while drawing with the expensive colored pencils Michael had bought. It was a Tuesday morning when Michael noticed something odd during breakfast. While reading emails on his tablet, he caught a glimpse of Noah wolfing down his food at an alarming speed. Slow down, Noah, Margaret said gently, pouring more juice into his cup. No one's going to take your plate away. The boy nodded, but kept eating quickly, his eyes occasionally checking the door, as if expecting someone to come in and remove him. Emma, on the other hand, ate methodically, taking small portions of everything as if rationing them. Her gaze was alert and calculating, analyzing every interaction. Is there something wrong with the food? Michael asked, lowering his tablet. No, Emma replied quickly. It's great. Thank you. It was always the same, a careful politeness, as though each kindness had to be acknowledged before it could be taken away. I was thinking, Michael went on, that we could go to the mall today. Noah needs more clothes, and maybe you'd like to pick out some toys. Noah's eyes lit up, but Emma kept her expression neutral. We don't need toys, she said. We already have plenty. Plenty was a stretch. Despite Michael's initial shopping spree, the children had only the basics. Emma especially seemed reluctant to accumulate belongings. Maybe some books then, Michael suggested. Margaret mentioned you like stories. A brief smile crossed Emma's face before disappearing. Books don't take up much space, she conceded. They're easy to carry. The implication was clear. She was still prepared to leave, to be sent away. Michael exchanged a worried look with Margaret, After breakfast, while the children went to brush their teeth, Margaret brought up the topic. "It'll take time," she said, collecting the dishes. "They've been abandoned. Trust doesn't come back overnight." "It's been 2 weeks," Michael argued, oddly feeling rejected. "I've done everything I can." Margaret offered a sympathetic smile. 2 weeks versus months of trauma. "Be patient, Michael. Emma is protecting herself and her brother from disappointment." Michael nodded, recognizing the truth in her words. Upstairs, he could hear Noah laughing at something Emma said. The sound, still rare in the house, warmed something inside him. At the mall, Noah ran from display to display, excitedly pointing to colorful toys. Emma walked more slowly, always keeping an eye on her brother like a small guardian. "What do you think of that one?" Michael asked, pointing to a board game in a store window. Emma shrugged. "Looks cool." "You don't have to be afraid to want things, Emma," Michael said gently. The girl looked up at him, surprised at his insight. "I'm not afraid," she replied. "It's just, the more stuff you have, the more you can lose." The wisdom of her remark caught him off guard. She was absolutely right, of course. It was a lesson many adults never learn. "Sometimes," he said, choosing his words carefully, "it's worth the risk." She didn't reply, but when they went into the bookstore, her eyes lit up involuntarily at the colorful shelves. Michael watched her run her fingers along the covers, silently reading the titles. "Can I really pick anyone?" she asked, her voice betraying excitement. "As many as you want," he replied. For the first time, Michael saw Emma behave like a typical 5-year-old. She selected several books, checking the illustrations and asking Michael about words she didn't recognize. When they left the store, she clutched a bag of 6 new books to her chest like a treasure. Noah, meanwhile, chose a dinosaur plush almost bigger than he was, plus a few toy cars. On the way back, Michael got a call from Thomas, his lawyer. "Michael, we have a situation," came the voice over the car speaker. "Social services contacted me about the children." Michael felt a chill in his stomach. He glanced in the rearview mirror, seeing Emma suddenly alert, listening to every word. "Can we talk later?" he replied hastily, cutting the call short. The damage was done. The brightness in Emma's eyes had vanished, replaced by a resignation that broke Michael's heart. "They're going to take us away?" she asked calmly when they arrived home. "No," Michael said firmly. "I won't let that happen." "That's what everyone says," Emma murmured, taking Noah's hand and heading upstairs. That afternoon, Michael locked himself in his office with Thomas. The lawyer, a slim man with graying hair at the temples, looked concerned. "It's complicated," he explained. "A social worker named Helen Matthews is investigating. Apparently someone at the bakery recognized the kids from the database and reported them." "What's the problem?" "I'm taking good care of them," Michael argued. Thomas sighed. "The problem, Michael, is that you have no legal status as their guardian. Technically, you're harboring runaway minors." "They didn't run away from anywhere. They were abandoned," Michael said, feeling anger rising. "Legally, they should be under state custody while we look for the father or other relatives." Michael ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "Now what?" "Now we have a meeting with Mrs. Matthews tomorrow at 10 a.m. She wants to meet you and assess the children's living conditions." Thomas hesitated. "She also mentioned wanting to check your intentions." "My intentions? What does that mean?" "It means a single billionaire around 50, suddenly deciding to take in 2 homeless kids, raises some questions," Thomas said diplomatically. The insinuation made Michael pale with anger. "That's absurd." "It's standard procedure," Thomas reassured him. "They have to ensure the children's well-being." Michael nodded, controlling his indignation. "I'll do whatever is necessary." After Thomas left, Michael went upstairs to find the kids. He found Noah asleep in his bed, hugging his new dinosaur tightly. But Emma was nowhere to be seen. After searching the house, he found her in the backyard garden, sitting alone on a swing. As he approached, he noticed her old backpack beside her, seemingly packed. "We're ready to go," she said, without looking at him. "When the social worker gets here," Michael felt a pang in his chest. "Emma, look at me." He knelt down to her eye level. "I'm not going to let anyone take you away." She finally looked at him, her intense blue eyes. Why? Why do you care? No one else ever has. The question hit him unprepared. Why indeed? Over the last 20 years, he had steamrolled over people and entire companies without a second thought. What was different now? Because you remind me of someone, he admitted. Someone who was alone and afraid. Someone who needed an adult to care. You, Emma guessed. Michael nodded. And because you deserve a chance. The same chance I had. They'll separate us, she whispered, revealing her deepest fear at last. They'll take Noah to one family and me to another. Not as long as I can stop it, Michael promised. The next day arrived far too quickly. Margaret had prepared the house immaculately and baked fresh cookies. Noah wore a clean shirt and slacks that looked brand new, while Emma wore a simple but neat dress, her hair carefully combed. Helen Matthews arrived right at 10 a.m. She was a middle-aged woman with dark hair in a tight bun and observant eyes behind thin framed glasses. Thomas received her, then led her to Michael's office. "Mr. Carter," she said, extending her hand. "Thank you for seeing me." Michael shook her hand, noting her firm grip. "Thank you for coming, Miss Matthews." "Helen, please." She sat down, opening a folder. "I have a few questions, if you don't mind." The questioning was thorough. She asked about his finances, his background, and his motivations. Michael answered everything patiently, even when the questions felt invasive. "I should note," she said at one point, "that there is no record of any previous involvement of yours with children's charities or any prior interest in adoption or foster care." "Is that relevant?" Michael asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. "It's unusual," Helen replied. "Most people who decide to foster or adopt show a prior interest in child welfare. Yours emerged suddenly. Sometimes it takes a specific encounter to open our eyes," Michael said. "I can assure you my intentions are genuine." Helen studied him for a moment. "I'd like to meet the children now." Noah was in the living room, playing with his new toy cars. When Helen introduced herself, he smiled shyly and offered her one of the cars. Emma, however, remained reserved, answering questions cautiously. "Are you happy here?" Helen asked directly. Noah nodded enthusiastically. "I have my own room, and Margaret makes pancakes every Sunday." Emma took longer to respond. "It's good," she finally said. "Michael is nice to us." Helen smiled kindly at her. "Do you miss your dad?" The question caught everyone off guard. Emma's eyes filled with tears unshed. "He'll come back someday," she said with conviction. "But until then, we want to stay here. Please." The vulnerability in that "please" seemed to affect even the social worker. She asked a few more questions, observed the interaction between Michael and the children over lunch, and spoke briefly with Margaret. Finally, as she was about to leave, she asked for a moment alone with Michael. "Mr. Carter, I'll be frank," she said once they were back in the office. "There are irregularities in this situation. Standard procedure would be to place the children in a temporary shelter while we search for relatives or assess foster homes." Michael felt his heart tighten. "And what stops that from happening now?" Helen considered him for a moment. "The children clearly feel safe here. And though your sudden calling to parenthood raises questions, I don't see anything suggesting you're unfit as a temporary guardian." "Temporary?" Michael asked, feeling a spark of hope. "I can recommend emergency temporary custody in your care while we continue to look for the father or any relatives," Helen explained. "But that will require a serious commitment from you. Regular visits, evaluations, perhaps even parenting classes." "I'll do whatever it takes," Michael said without hesitation. Helen smiled for the first time. "You know, Mr. Carter, when I heard that a ruthless billionaire had taken in 2 homeless children, I expected some kind of PR charity project." She closed her folder. "I'm glad I was wrong." After Helen and Thomas left, Michael found Emma waiting in the hallway. "What did she say?" the girl asked, her eyes betraying the fear she tried to hide. Michael knelt to meet her gaze. "She said you can stay for now." Emma's shoulders relaxed slightly. "How long is for now?" "I don't know," Michael answered honestly, "but I'm going to fight for as long as you need." Emma nodded, processing the information. "Do you really want us to stay?" Even if it's hard. Michael realized that was the real question, not whether they could stay, but whether they were truly wanted. Even if it's hard, he confirmed, especially if it's hard. For the first time, Emma stepped forward and hugged him spontaneously, her small arms barely reaching around his neck. It was a quick hug, almost furtive, but for Michael, it meant everything. "I'll tell Noah," she said, running upstairs. Michael remained in the corridor, feeling a strange mix of relief and fear. The road ahead would be difficult and uncertain. He would have to prove his commitment not only to Helen, but to the children, and perhaps most importantly, to himself. But for the first time in a long time, he felt he was fighting for something that truly mattered. The kitchen calendar showed 1 month since Emma and Noah had entered Michael's life. A month that felt both like an eternity and a blink of an eye. The mansion, once impeccably neat, now had signs of children everywhere, drawings stuck to the fridge with colorful magnets, small shoes in the hallway, children's books on coffee tables. Michael noticed these small changes with a mixture of fascination and nervousness. His home, like his life, had always been organized, predictable, under control. Now there was chaos, noise, and a constant feeling of venturing into uncharted territory. "Mr. Carter," said Helen Matthews during her weekly visit, "how are you adapting to everyday life with the children?" Michael adjusted his tie, a nervous habit he'd never lost. "We're finding our rhythm," Helen jotted something down on her clipboard, "and about spending time together. Quality time is essential for building bonds." The question made him uncomfortable. He had provided everything the children could materially need: clothes, toys, a complete makeover of 2 bedrooms so each could have their own space. But quality time, between business meetings, video calls, and running his financial empire, he realized this aspect had largely been left to Margaret. "I'll make a greater effort," he promised. After Helen left, Michael cleared his schedule for the rest of the week, unthinkable just 2 months prior, and began planning. If there was one thing Michael Carter excelled at, it was executing plans. The next morning, he surprised the kids at breakfast. "Who wants to go to the zoo today?" Noah almost toppled off his chair in excitement. "Are there dinosaurs there?" Michael laughed. "Dinosaurs have been extinct for millions of years, but they do have other interesting animals." "Like lions?" asked Emma, her eyes bright despite her attempt to seem uninterested. "Lions, tigers, elephants," Michael confirmed. "We'll go right after breakfast." Margaret, clearing the plates, hid a satisfied smile. The day was perfect, sunny but not too hot. Michael arranged for private access to the zoo for privacy's sake, though he avoided mentioning this detail to keep it from seeming ostentatious. Noah ran from one enclosure to another, demanding to be lifted to see the animals if they were far away. Emma, calmer, read every information sign aloud, impressing Michael with her advanced reading skills for her age. "Do you like books about animals?" he asked as they watched the monkeys. Emma nodded. "Mom had a big book with pictures. She taught me to read using it." It was rare for Emma to mention her mother spontaneously. Michael saw it as a small victory. "We can buy more animal books," he suggested. "Maybe even an encyclopedia." "What's an encyclopedia?" he clarified. "It's a big book that explains everything about a topic, like a collection of many books in one." Her eyes grew wide. "I really want that." After the zoo, they stopped at a huge bookstore. Michael watched as Emma wandered the aisles with reverence, like she was in a temple. Noah quickly found the children's section and sat on the floor, flipping through dinosaur-themed books. "Can I have this one?" Emma asked, holding a large illustrated animal encyclopedia that she could barely carry. "Of course," Michael replied. "And what else?" She looked puzzled. "I can choose more than one." "As many as you like." Emma's expression wavered between disbelief and delight. Noah, overhearing, immediately piled up storybooks and dinosaur guides. When they left, each child carried a bag full of new books. On the way back, Michael noticed Emma gazing out the window thoughtfully. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "Why are you doing all this for us?" she asked directly. The question caught him off guard. "Because I care about you." "But why?" she insisted. You barely know us. Michael thought hard about his answer. Sometimes you just know when something is important. Like finding the perfect book on a shelf. Emma seemed to accept that answer, turning back to the window. Thanks for the books, really. Over the next few days, Michael continued his mission to create meaningful moments. He took the children to an amusement park, an aquarium, shopping for decorations, so they could personalize their rooms however they wished. Noah always showed unbridled enthusiasm, but Michael noticed that Emma seemed happiest in quieter moments when he read to them at night or when they simply watched a movie together in the living room. After a week of such outings, Michael made a surprising discovery. He was genuinely having fun. It wasn't just a duty or a way to impress the social worker. There was something profoundly satisfying in seeing the world through their eyes. Noah's awe at seeing an elephant for the first time. Emma's concentration when learning something new. One night, while working in his office after the children had gone to bed, Michael heard a muffled scream. He ran to Emma's room and found the girl sitting in bed, clutching the blankets, breathing heavily. "Emma, are you all right?" She blinked, as if trying to separate dream from reality. "I'm fine," she muttered. "I just heard a noise." Michael moved closer and sat at the edge of the bed. "Did you have a nightmare?" Emma shook her head. "I don't remember. Just a silly dream." It was clearly a lie. Her eyes were still wide with fear, her body tense like a drawn bowstring. But Michael didn't push it. "Want me to stay here until you fall asleep again?" "No need," she replied quickly. "It's over." Michael hesitated, not wanting to leave her alone but respecting her need for space. "Are you sure?" Emma nodded, lying down again and pulling the blanket up to her chin. "Good night, Michael." "Good night, Emma. I'll be in the hallway if you need me." Instead of returning to his office, Michael lingered in the hallway, unsure. Moments later, Margaret appeared, wearing a robe over her pajamas. "I heard a scream," she explained. "Was it Emma?" Michael nodded. "Her nightmare, I think, but she doesn't want to talk about it." Margaret gave him a reassuring smile. "Leave it to me." She knocked softly and entered Emma's room. Michael stayed in the hallway, close enough to hear muffled voices but not the exact words. 20 minutes later, Margaret came out, shutting the door quietly. "She's asleep now," she said. "What happened?" Michael asked. "What was the nightmare about?" Margaret hesitated. "It's not for me to say. She'll tell you when she's ready." Michael felt a flash of frustration, but nodded. "Thank you, Margaret." The next morning, Emma seemed normal, though slightly shadowed by faint circles under her eyes. While Noah chattered excitedly about the day's plans, she ate quietly. "I thought we could go for a picnic at the park," Michael suggested. "It's a nice day." Noah applauded the idea, but Emma just shrugged. "Whatever." At the park, while Noah played on the playground under Margaret's watchful eye, Michael found Emma sitting alone on a bench, watching other parents with their children. "May I sit?" he asked. Emma scooted over, making room. They remained silent for a few minutes, observing the other families. "You know," Michael began casually, "when I was little, I had nightmares almost every night." Emma turned to him, surprised. "I dreamed I was in a dark place, calling for my mom, but she never answered," he continued. "It was after she died. I was really scared of being alone." "What did you do?" Emma asked softly. "Most times, I just cried until I fell asleep again," Michael admitted. "There was no one to comfort me in the orphanage. But then, when I was first fostered, my new mom gave me a trick." "What trick?" "She gave me a tiny flashlight to keep under my pillow." Michael smiled at the memory. "She said the light chased away nightmares. I'm not sure if it really did, but I felt safer, like I had a secret power against the monsters." Emma looked down at her hands. "My nightmare doesn't have monsters." "No?" She shook her head. "It has Dad. He comes back and takes Noah away, but leaves me behind, says he can only take one of us." Michael felt his heart clench. "That won't happen, Emma." "How do you know?" Her blue eyes demanded honesty. "Because I won't let it," he said firmly. "You and Noah stay together, no matter what." Emma considered his words. "Margaret said you have fears too." Everyone does, Michael confirmed. Even rich grown-ups. Michael smiled. Especially rich grown-ups. What are you afraid of? She asked, truly curious. The question made him pause. It was easy to talk about childhood fears, but his current fears, that felt like a dangerous vulnerability. Still, if he wanted Emma to trust him, he needed to offer the same trust. I'm afraid of failing, he finally admitted. Of not being good enough to take care of you two. Emma looked surprised by the confession. You're already better than a lot of people, she said simply. Thank you, Michael replied, oddly touched by the sincere compliment. They fell silent again, but it was a different silence now, comfortable, shared. Michael, Emma said suddenly, do you think our dad will ever come back? The question was complicated. Michael didn't want to give her false hope, but he also didn't want to destroy her image of her father. I don't know, Emma, he answered honestly. I wish I had a better answer. That's okay, she said, surprising him. I just wanted to know. That night, after dinner, Michael had a surprise ready. At bedtime, he brought the children to Emma's room. I have something for you too, he said, pulling out 2 small packages from his pocket. Emma and Noah opened them simultaneously. Inside each was a small pocket flashlight, blue for Noah and purple for Emma. To chase away nightmares, Michael explained. Noah immediately turned his flashlight on, delighted by the beam dancing on the wall. Emma held hers carefully, as if it were precious. Thank you, she said in a low voice. There's one more thing, Michael continued, taking a walkie-talkie from his pocket. This one is for you, Emma. I'll keep the other in my room. If you have another nightmare, or need anything at all in the night, just press this button and talk, I'll be there. Emma's eyes widened. Even if you're sleeping. Even if I'm sleeping, he confirmed. I promise I'll hear it. That night, after tucking the children in, Michael spoke with Margaret. Thanks for talking with her last night, he said. What did you say to make her trust me? Margaret smiled enigmatically. I just told her the truth, that you were once a frightened child too, that you've also had losses, and that maybe you needed her and Noah as much as they need you. Michael looked at her, surprised. You really think that? You've changed these last few weeks, Michael, Margaret observed. You're more present, not just physically, but emotionally. It's like those children woke up a part of you that's been asleep. He reflected on her words. It was true. He felt different. The numbers in his bank accounts, the corporate mergers, the headlines about his deals, all of it felt less significant now compared to Noah's smile or Emma's gradual trust. Later that night, while working in his office, the walkie-talkie on his desk crackled softly. Michael, Emma's small, hesitant voice came through. Are you there? He grabbed the device immediately. I'm here. Emma, is everything okay? There was a pause. I just wanted to make sure it worked. Michael smiled at the little device. It works perfectly. I'm always here if you need me. Good night then, she said, her voice already more relaxed. Good night, Emma. Michael placed the walkie-talkie on the table, a strange sense of joy filling him. It wasn't just a gadget or a way to ease nightmares. It was a symbol of trust, an invisible thread connecting him to the girl who, without realizing it, was slowly filling a void in his life he hadn't known existed. The next morning, Emma came down for breakfast with the walkie-talkie clipped to the waistband of her pajamas, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. Michael noticed but didn't comment, merely exchanging a knowing smile with her. It was a small step, but a meaningful one, a growing bond between them, like a delicate plant finally finding the sun after too long in the shadows. Autumn had given way to winter. Outside the Carter mansion, the gardens were covered by a thin layer of snow, turning the landscape into a postcard scene. Inside, the warmth of the heaters contrasted with the cold outside, creating that cozy atmosphere only truly inhabited homes possess. In the kitchen, Noah was drawing with crayons, his tongue stuck out in concentration. Emma read one of her new books, occasionally glancing at her brother and smiling. It was a scene of domestic normalcy that would have been unimaginable 3 months earlier. Michael watched them from the doorway, a hot coffee in his hands, when his phone vibrated. It was Thomas, his attorney. I need to see you, said the voice on the other end. In person. It's about the children. The serious tone made Michael instantly alert. I'll be at the office in an hour. He hated leaving. Saturday mornings had become a ritual for the three of them. Late breakfast, then some activity together, usually something simple like a board game or a movie. But Thomas's tone left no room for delays. I have to go out for a few hours, he announced, coming over to the table. Work. Emma lifted her eyes from her book, her perceptive gaze catching something in Michael's expression. Is everything okay? Sure, he replied, trying to sound casual. Thomas needs me to sign some documents. Can we go with you? Noah asked, holding up his drawing of what looked like a family of colorful dinosaurs. Not this time, buddy, Michael said, ruffling the boy's hair, but I promise I'll be back in time for lunch. In the office, Thomas was waiting with a grave expression and a folder full of documents. The lawyer, normally calm and methodical, appeared restless. What happened? Michael asked straight away. Thomas sighed, opening the folder. I got a notification from Child Protective Services. The temporary custody period is ending. What? How? Michael felt his throat tighten. Helen said we had time. Emergency temporary custody was never meant as a permanent fix, Thomas explained. It was an exceptional measure because you provided a safe environment when the kids needed it most. And I still am. Yes, but the system wants a definitive solution. Thomas slid a document across the table. They've identified a family interested in adopting both children, a couple with prior adoption experience, stable, great references. Michael picked up the paper, but the words blurred before his eyes. A family, someone taking Emma and Noah away. The thought felt like a punch to the gut. This can't happen, he whispered, his voice weaker than he intended. There is an alternative, Thomas said. You could file for permanent guardianship or even adoption. The word hung between them, heavy with implications. Adoption, legal, permanent parenthood. Adoption, Michael repeated, testing the word. It means you'd become their father, yes, Thomas confirmed. Legally responsible in every way. Michael stood abruptly, walking to the window. Outside, the city continued its usual pace, oblivious to the emotional storm in that office. I'm not sure I'm ready for that, Thomas. You'll need to decide soon, the lawyer replied. We have a week to respond. If we don't file the paperwork, they'll likely go to this other family. Michael nodded absently, his mind a chaos of conflicting thoughts. Thanks, Thomas. I need to think. On the drive back, Michael couldn't focus. Father. The word brought up images of his own dad, or rather, the absence of him. A man who'd abandoned his pregnant mother, never once appearing to assume responsibility. And then there were the fathers in the foster homes, some kind, some not, but all eventually sending him back into the system. Could he do better? Could he be the kind of father Emma and Noah deserved? He arrived home later than planned, finding the children in the garden with Margaret, enjoying the fresh snow. Noah had built what vaguely resembled a snowman, while Emma made snow angels. Look, Michael, Noah called when he saw him. I made a snow dinosaur, Michael forced a smile, walking over. It's the best snow dinosaur I've ever seen. Emma, however, immediately sensed something was off. She got up, dusting snow from her clothes. What happened? She asked. Her penetrating blue eyes locked on his face. Michael hesitated. Nothing to worry about now. Let's have lunch. I'm starving. Over lunch, he tried to keep the conversation light, but his mind kept returning to Thomas's ultimatum. 1 week to decide if he wanted to be a father. 1 week to determine the future of 3 lives. That afternoon, he got a call from Helen Matthews. Mr. Carter, I hope Thomas spoke with you, she said. Yes, he informed me about the situation. I'd like to schedule a visit tomorrow to discuss your options, Helen continued, and also to talk about the Winters family. Winters. The couple interested in adopting Emma and Noah, she explained. They're wonderful people. He's a university professor, she's a pediatrician. They've already adopted 2 children, both well-adjusted and happy. Michael felt a surge of irrational jealousy. Of course they'd be perfect. A professor and a doctor, probably with a dog and a house with a white picket fence. Is 10 tomorrow okay? He asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. Perfect. See you tomorrow, Mr. Carter. That night, after putting the children to bed, Michael stayed up in his office, staring into the fireplace. The last few months had been the happiest he could remember in years, maybe decades. The simple acts of reading Noah a bedtime story, discussing a book with Emma, or sharing a meal, these had brought a joy no business triumph had ever matched. And now, he might lose it all. Still up? Came Margaret's voice, surprising him. She rarely sought him out this late. Thinking, he replied. Margaret entered, carrying a tray of hot tea. Thomas called me, said you might need a talk. Michael accepted the teacup gratefully. You always know when to show up. 30 years working for you gives me that kind of intuition, she replied, settling in the armchair opposite him. Want to talk about it? He told her about the ultimatum, about the other family, about having a week. Margaret listened quietly, her face showing only mild surprise. What do you intend to do? She asked finally. I don't know, Michael admitted. I don't know if I can be what they need. And what do you think they need? The question caught him off guard. A father, someone who knows what they're doing, someone who won't screw it all up. Margaret smiled gently. No parent knows what they're doing, Michael. Everyone's improvising, hoping to do more right than wrong. But these winters seem perfect. Professor, pediatrician. Titles don't make parents, Margaret observed. Emma and Noah don't need impressive resumes. They need someone who loves them for who they are. What if I don't know how? The vulnerability in the question startled even Michael. You already are, Margaret answered simply. When Noah has a nightmare, who stays up telling him stories until he sleeps again? When Emma struggles with the homework I started bringing, who patiently explains it to her? You're already their father, Michael. The question is whether you want a piece of paper to say so. Her words weighed on him all night. He barely slept, replaying the past months, the changes in the house, in his routine, in his heart. Morning came, and Helen Matthews arrived promptly at 10. She brought more documents and photos of the Winters family, a very attractive couple in their 40s, with 2 smiling children in a sunny backyard. They're Mark and Diana, Helen explained. Mark teaches literature at a state university, and Diana works at a children's hospital. They live in a spacious house about 2 hours away, in a nice neighborhood with great schools. Michael looked at the photos, feeling a sense of dread. They seemed straight out of a life insurance commercial. How long would the adoption process take? He asked, hearing the emotion creeping into his voice. For them? Relatively quick. They've done this before, have all the necessary certifications. Helen hesitated. If you decide it's best for the kids, we can transition in a month, maybe sooner. A month, 4 weeks, and Emma and Noah would be out of his life. What if... Michael began, struggling to form words. What if I wanted to adopt them? Helen studied him for a moment. It would be a more complex process. You've never adopted. You're single. Your work history suggests you have little free time. I've been cutting back, he argued, delegating responsibilities. That's good, Guy, but the court will consider other factors too. Helen flipped through some documents. In your favor, you have financial resources, stability, and an existing bond with the children. Against you, your lack of previous experience with kids and your historically unpredictable schedule. Michael nodded, taking it in. How long? 6 months to a year, probably, with continuous supervision during that period. Their conversation was interrupted by a small bump at the door. Noah burst in, followed by Emma trying to hold him back. Sorry, Emma said quickly. He slipped away when Margaret answered the phone. Helen smiled at the children. Hello, Noah, Emma. How are you today? Good, Emma replied politely, while Noah approached the table, curious about the papers. What are those pictures? He asked, pointing to the Winters family photos. Michael and Helen exchanged tense looks. Before either could respond, Emma stepped closer and looked at the photos. Her sharp mind connected the dots instantly. They're the people who want to take us away, she asked, her small but firm voice betraying a hint of dread. Emma, Michael began, no one's decided anything yet. Are they going to separate us? Her voice trembled slightly. No, Helen said firmly. Emma, I promised you and Noah would stay together, remember? That promise still stands. Sensing the tension, Noah moved closer to his sister. I don't want to go away. I want to stay with Michael. The simple, direct statement hit Michael like lightning. The reality struck him fully. This wasn't just about whether he felt ready to be a father. It was about two children who already saw him as family. No one is going anywhere today, Michael said, kneeling to eye level with the kids. I promise we'll talk about this together, okay? Emma nodded, her eyes showing more understanding than any 5-year-old should. She took Noah's hand. Let's let the grown-ups talk. As the children left, a heavy silence filled the room. This complicates things, Helen commented. On the contrary, Michael replied. It simplifies them. After Helen left, Michael spent the rest of the day with the kids, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy while his mind raced. That evening, after Noah was asleep, he found Emma still awake, sitting at her bedroom window, gazing at the stars. Can I sit with you? He asked. She nodded, shifting over to make room. They stared in silence at the night sky for a few moments. Are we really leaving? Emma finally asked. Michael took a deep breath. That depends. On what? Partly on you, he said honestly, and partly on me. Emma looked at him with serious eyes. Do you want us to stay? That was the central question, wasn't it? Beneath all the doubts about his parenting ability, what did he truly want? Yes, he replied, surprised at the certainty in his own voice. I really want you to stay. Then why did that woman have pictures of another family? Michael searched for the simplest explanation. Because for you two to stay here permanently, legally, I'd have to become your father. Not just someone caring for you temporarily, but your father forever. Emma processed this. And you don't want to be our dad? The question struck deep. It wasn't a matter of want. It was fear. Fear of failing, of not being enough, of repeating the mistakes others had made with him. I'm afraid I won't be good at it, he admitted. That I'll let you down. Emma thought for a moment. Noah spilled juice on your laptop last week, and you didn't even yell at him. It was an accident, Michael recalled. Dad yelled even if it was an accident, Emma said quietly. The simple comparison triggered a shift inside Michael. The fear was still there, but something stronger, resolve, began to grow beside it. Emma, he said, gently holding her small hands, I want to try. I want to be your father, and Noah's too, if you'll have me. Even if you don't know how, she asked, echoing his own doubts. Even if I don't know how, he confirmed. We'll learn together. Emma gave a small but genuine smile. I think it would be nice to have you as a dad. Michael felt his eyes grow moist. I think it would be the greatest honor of my life to be a dad to both of you. He hugged Emma, feeling her small head rest against his chest. The decision was made. Tomorrow he would call Thomas and start the adoption process. It would be long, difficult, scrutinized at every step. But the alternative, losing Emma and Noah, was simply unthinkable. The final hearing date was approaching. After 6 months of social worker visits, psychological evaluations, background checks, and mountains of paperwork, the court date had arrived. In a few hours, a judge would decide whether Michael would be legally recognized as Emma and Noah's father, or if they'd be placed with the Winters family, who remained interested in adopting them. Michael adjusted his tie for the 3rd time, staring at himself in the mirror. He'd slept little the night before, mentally reviewing every argument Thomas had prepared. The lawyer was confident, but Michael knew the system too well to share his optimism. He had been a child in legal limbo himself. He knew how quickly things could go wrong. It's almost time, Margaret announced, appearing at his bedroom door. The children are ready. Michael nodded, following her downstairs. Noah was on the couch, uncomfortable in his little suit, swinging his legs that didn't quite reach the floor. Emma stood beside him, wearing a light blue dress that highlighted her eyes. Her hair was arranged in neatly braided pigtails by Margaret. You two look great, Michael said, trying to sound encouraging. Noah smiled, but Emma remained serious. In recent weeks, She had grown increasingly quiet, watchful. Michael had noticed but attributed it to anxiety over the hearing. After all, he could barely sleep himself. "Remember what we talked about," he said, kneeling in front of them. "The judge may ask you some questions, but there are no right or wrong answers. Just tell the truth." "What if he decides we can't stay?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Michael hesitated. He'd promised to always be honest with them, but now the truth felt too cruel. "Let's think positively," he finally replied. "Thomas says we have a strong case." Emma didn't look convinced. Her perceptive eyes noted the tension he was trying to mask. "Time's up," Thomas said, entering the room. "The car is waiting." The ride to the courthouse was silent. Sensing the tension, Noah was unusually quiet, clutching the small dinosaur plush he never left behind. Emma gazed out the window, her reflection showing an expression far older than her 6 years. At the courthouse, they were led to a waiting room. Helen Matthews was already there, accompanied by a woman Michael didn't recognize. "Mr. Carter," Helen greeted him. "This is Dr. Sophia Chen, the court-appointed psychologist to evaluate the children today." Michael shook the woman's hand, trying to hide his surprise. "I wasn't aware there would be another evaluation." "It's standard procedure," Helen explained. "Just a brief conversation to ensure the children feel comfortable with the situation." While Dr. Chen spoke with Emma and Noah in a corner of the room, Michael pulled Helen aside. "What's going on? Why another evaluation at the last minute?" Helen hesitated. "Judge Harmon is known for being cautious with single adopter cases, especially when other options are available." "So you're saying the Winters are still in the picture?" Michael felt his stomach drop. "I'm saying the judge will consider all options for the children's best interest," Helen replied diplomatically. Michael looked over at Emma and Noah, now drawing pictures the psychologist had provided. The last few months played like a movie in his mind. The bakery, the shoe, the first night at the mansion, bedtime stories, nightmares conquered, small daily victories. The thought of losing all that was unbearable. "Mr. Carter," Dr. Chen called. "Could you give me a few minutes alone with the children?" Michael nodded reluctantly. "Of course, I'll be right over there." He stepped away, joining Thomas at the other side of the room. "How are we looking?" he asked the lawyer. Thomas shrugged. "As prepared as we can be. All documents are in order. Previous evaluations were positive. We have character witnesses ready to testify that you're suitable as a father." "But," Michael recognized that tone, "but Judge Harmon is traditional. He prefers conventional families, a mother, father, white picket fence." "The Winters," Michael muttered. "They fit his ideal model," "Yes," Thomas confirmed, "but it's not a lost cause. You do have the existing bond with the kids in your favor. Helen's reports emphasize that—" Their conversation was interrupted by the bailiff announcing that the hearing would begin in 10 minutes. Michael went back to the children, noticing that Emma looked even more tense. "Everything okay?" he asked, crouching beside her. Emma nodded without meeting his eyes. "Yeah." "Emma, look at me." He waited until her blue eyes met his. "No matter what happens in there, I want you to know you two are the best thing that's ever happened to me. I'll never forget that." Something flickered across her face. Fear, perhaps comprehension. She glanced at Noah, then back at Michael. "Can we go to the bathroom first?" she asked. "Sure," Michael replied. "Margaret can take you." "I'll take Noah," Emma said quickly. "We saw it when we came in." There was something odd about her insistence, but Michael was too nervous to question it. "Okay, but be quick. The hearing starts in a few minutes." Emma grabbed Noah's hand and the two left the room. Margaret offered to accompany them, but Emma said they'd be fine. Michael turned back to the final details with Thomas, trying to calm his nerves. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The bailiff appeared again. "We're ready to start," he announced. Michael looked around, suddenly realizing the children hadn't returned. "Emma and Noah aren't back yet." Margaret immediately volunteered to check. She returned minutes later, pale-faced. "They're not there," she said. "I checked all the bathrooms on this floor." A cold wave ran down Michael's spine. Maybe they got lost. This place is big. Yet as he said it, a terrible certainty began forming. Emma's expression when he spoke as if he was saying goodbye, her insistence they go alone. The backpack she carried, larger than necessary for a court hearing. They ran away, he said, the realization hitting him like a punch. The next hour was a blur of movement and panic. The court security was alerted. Helen and Thomas coordinated searches of the building. Michael rushed to the entrance, looking desperately among the crowds. But the large judicial complex was packed. 2 small children could easily slip out unnoticed. "We need to call the police," Helen urged, once it was clear the children weren't in the building. "No," Michael responded instinctively. His childhood experiences made him wary of the system. Police meant reports, meant treating them like runaways, possibly separating them once found. "I'll find them." "Mr. Carter, with all due respect, 2 children alone in the city." "I know Emma," Michael interrupted. "I know how she thinks." He turned to Margaret. "Call the driver. I need to go to the bakery." "The bakery?" Thomas asked, confused. "That's where it all started," Michael explained, already moving toward the exit. "Emma is clever. She has a plan, and I'd bet she starts with the place we first met." The ride to Laurent's bakery never felt so long. Michael practically jumped from the car before it fully stopped, rushing inside with a pounding heart. The same attendant from months ago recognized him. "Mr. Carter, what a coincidence. 2 kids were here asking about you maybe half an hour ago." Relief and renewed worry washed over Michael. "A blonde girl and a little boy? What did they want?" "The girl asked if I remembered her, said she was looking for somewhere to stay with her brother." The young man looked uncomfortable. "I told them they couldn't stay here, obviously. I suggested they try the church across the street." Michael thanked him quickly and hurried over to the church in question. It was an old stone building with heavy wooden doors. Inside, the air was cold and silent, broken only by the echo of his hurried footsteps. "May I help you?" asked a middle-aged man, likely the pastor. "I'm looking for 2 children," Michael said, trying to steady his breathing. "Emma and Noah, a girl about 6, a boy about 4. Were they here today?" The pastor nodded slowly. "They were, yes. The girl said they were waiting for their father." He studied Michael curiously. "Is that you?" "Yes," Michael said without hesitation. "Where are they now?" "They left about 20 minutes ago. The girl mentioned something about a park they used to stay in." Michael thanked him and ran back to the car. The park, of course. She was retracing her life on the streets, revisiting places she knew, places she felt safe before she met him. The park wasn't far, but every second felt like an eternity. When they finally arrived, Michael jumped out and began frantically searching. It was large, with various playgrounds and wooded areas. Margaret was the one who spotted them first. "There!" She pointed to a distant corner near a big tree. Michael ran as if his life depended on it. From a distance, he saw the 2 small figures sitting beneath the tree. Noah clutching his plush dinosaur, Emma with her head bowed. "Emma! Noah!" he shouted, unable to hide the relief in his voice. The kids looked up in unison. Noah was the first to react, his face lighting up with a smile. "Michael!" he yelled, getting up and running toward him. Michael dropped to his knees, catching the boy in his arms, holding him tight as though afraid he might disappear again. Over Noah's shoulder, he saw Emma approaching slowly, her face a mixture of relief and fear. "Emma," he said gently, extending one arm toward her while still hugging Noah. "Come here." She hesitated for a moment before running to him, tears finally escaping her tightly controlled eyes. Michael embraced them both with all the strength he could muster without hurting them, feeling his own face grow wet. "Why did you run away?" he asked once he found his voice. "You scared me so much." Emma pulled back slightly, wiping her tears on her sleeve. "We thought they were going to take us away," she explained. "When you talked like you were saying goodbye and that new lady showed up." "Oh, Emma," Michael sighed, finally understanding. "I wasn't saying goodbye. I was just nervous about the hearing." "But what if the judge says no?" Her voice trembled. "We heard Helen talking about the other family. They sound perfect." Michael held Emma's small shoulders, looking directly into her eyes. "Listen closely, Emma. No matter what happens in that courtroom, no matter what any judge decides, I will never abandon you. Ever. Promise, she asked, her eyes searching for any sign of doubt. I promise with all that I am, Michael replied. You're my family now. And family never gives up on each other. Noah, still clinging to Michael, looked up. So we can go back home? The simplicity of his question brought a smile to Michael's face. Yes, Noah, but first, we need to go back to the courthouse. We still have a hearing. Will they separate us because we ran away? Emma asked, fear returning to her eyes. No, Michael assured her. I'll explain everything. But we have to be honest about what happened, okay? No more secrets. Emma nodded, looking both relieved and ashamed. Michael lifted Noah in his arms, took Emma's hand firmly, and together they walked back to the car, where Margaret stood waiting, wearing a calm smile. Returning to the courthouse was tense. Helen received them at the entrance, visibly relieved to see the children safe, but also worried about the implications of their disappearance. The judge is furious, she whispered to Michael. He paused the session, but he made it clear this does not help your case. I'll explain everything, Michael replied. It was a misunderstanding. Thomas appeared, shuffling his documents nervously. We're being called in. The judge wants everyone immediately. The courtroom looked bigger and more intimidating than Michael remembered. At the front, behind an elevated desk, Judge Harmon, an older man with grey hair and a stern expression, glared at them with obvious disapproval. Mr. Carter, he began, his deep voice echoing in the room. I'm extremely disappointed by today's events, fleeing with minors under temporary custody. With all due respect, Your Honor, Michael interrupted, I did not flee with the children. They ran away on their own, and I found them. The judge frowned, glancing at Emma and Noah, who stood close by Michael, looking small and frightened. Is that true, children? Did you run off by yourselves? Emma stepped forward, her chin lifted despite the fear in her eyes. Yes, sir, it was my idea. I thought they were going to take us away from Michael. And why did you think that? The judge asked, softening his tone slightly as he addressed the child. Because they always do, Emma answered simply, painfully. Whenever we start to like a place, someone decides we have to leave. A heavy silence fell over the courtroom. The judge observed Emma for a long moment before sighing. All right, let's proceed with the hearing, he decided. Mr. Thomas, you may begin your argument. The next 2 hours were a parade of testimonies, reports, and legal questions. Margaret spoke about the positive changes she'd witnessed in Michael since the children's arrival. Helen presented her assessments, highlighting the strong bond they had formed. Dr. Chen described her brief conversation with Emma and Noah before they ran, noting they genuinely seemed attached to Michael. Finally, a well-dressed family was called forward, the Winters. Michael saw them in person for the first time. The tall man with wire-rimmed glasses, the attractive woman with a kind smile. They looked like they belonged in an insurance commercial. Diana Winters spoke calmly about their prior adoption experiences, the bedroom they'd already prepared for Emma and Noah, and the excellent schools in their area. Mark explained how his flexible schedule as a professor would let him be present for the children. With each word, Michael felt his heart sink. How could he compete with that? A stable, experienced couple with happy adopted kids already, against a workaholic billionaire who barely knew how to make breakfast without help. Judge Harmon listened intently, making occasional notes. When the Winters finished, he looked down at his papers for a long time. Considering all I've heard today, he began, and the troubling events at the start of this hearing, I have serious reservations about granting adoption to Mr. Carter. Michael felt as though he'd been punched in the gut. Beside him, Emma squeezed his hand tightly. The Winters present a traditional, stable family environment with proven experience in adoption, the judge continued. Whereas Mr. Carter, despite his financial resources and evident affection for the children, has a history of excessive work and no experience with kids. Noah began to cry quietly. Michael placed a hand on his shoulder, attempting to give comfort he himself didn't feel. Therefore, the judge went on, I am inclined to... May I speak? A small but firm voice cut through the room, Emma's. The judge paused, surprised at the interruption. Excuse me, Emma, Michael whispered. We have to let the judge finish. But Emma was already standing, her intense blue eyes on the judge. Please, sir, just 1 minute. Judge Harmon looked torn between irritation and curiosity. Finally, he nodded. Very well, young lady. What would you like to say? Emma took a deep breath, glancing quickly at Michael before turning her gaze back to the judge. You said that family has experience, she began, her voice clear despite her nerves. They know how to be parents because they've done it before. That's correct, the judge acknowledged. But they don't know how to be parents to me and Noah, Emma continued. They don't know that Noah can only sleep if the hallway light is on, or that he's scared of thunder. They don't know I like to read dinosaur books even though I'm a girl, or that I sometimes have nightmares about my dad never coming back. The courtroom was utterly silent, everyone riveted by the little speaker. Michael didn't know any of that at first either, Emma admitted, but he learned. He stays up with me when I have nightmares. He bought a special nightlight for Noah's room. He never laughs when I ask questions, even if they're silly. She glanced briefly at the Winters. They seem nice, but we've had nice people before. People who promised to take care of us and then gave up when it got hard. Emma turned back to the judge, her voice trembling slightly. Michael is the only grown-up who never, ever gave up on us. Not when we ran away. Not when Noah spilled juice on his fancy laptop. Not when I got mad and said I hated him. A tear rolled down Emma's cheek, but she pushed on. Please, Your Honor, don't take us away from the only person who really wants us, no matter how hard it gets. The silence that followed was profound. Michael realized he was holding his breath. Noah was still, his wide eyes fixed on his sister. Judge Harmon removed his glasses, rubbing his eyes in a tired gesture. When he looked at Emma again, his expression had changed. Thank you for sharing, Emma, he said kindly. You're very articulate for someone so young. He glanced at the papers before him, then at the Winters, and finally at Michael. In all my years in family court, he began, I've learned that the hardest decisions rarely hinge on what's on paper alone. There's a human dimension no report can fully capture. He paused, looking directly at Michael. Mr. Carter, when we began this hearing, I had doubts about your ability to provide the traditional environment I consider ideal for children. Michael nodded, bracing for the worst. However, the judge continued, I am reminded today by the eloquence of a 6-year-old that family isn't only about traditional structures. It's about connection, commitment, and the willingness to persist even when it's difficult. Michael's heart began to pound. The Winters, said the judge, turning to the couple, are clearly exceptional candidates who would offer a loving home, yet I cannot ignore the bond already formed between these children and Mr. Carter, a bond that, as Emma eloquently stated, has been forged through adversity and built on trust. The judge settled back in his chair, his decision apparent. Therefore, after careful consideration, I grant Mr. Michael Carter's petition for adoption. Emma and Noah Carter will be legally recognized as his children from this moment forward. The room spun around Michael. Emma and Noah Carter, his children, legally, officially, forever. Your Honor, said Diana Winters, rising from her seat. Michael braced himself for an objection, but what came next surprised everyone. We'd like to withdraw our petition, she said, her husband nodding beside her. We came here because we wanted to offer a home to kids who needed one. But it's clear Emma and Noah have already found theirs. The judge nodded, clearly approving of the gesture. So noted. I wish you all the best. With a final bang of his gavel, it was over. Michael dropped to his knees, opening his arms, and Emma and Noah ran to him, all three converging in a tight embrace in the middle of the courtroom. Let's go home, Michael whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Our home. The ride back was the opposite of the trip in, joyful, noisy, full of plans for the future. Noah chattered non-stop about painting his room with dinosaurs, while Emma discussed the possibility of getting a dog in earnest detail. Margaret had gone home earlier to prepare a little celebration. The dining room table, rarely used before the children's arrival, was set with a cake and colorful decorations. Welcome officially to the family, she said, her eyes shining with happiness. That night, after all the excitement, when the children were finally in bed, Michael visited each of them for their usual bedtime ritual. In Noah's room, he found the boy almost asleep, hugging his inseparable dinosaur. "Good night, Noah," Michael whispered, tucking the blankets around the small body. "Good night." Noah paused for a moment, then finished with a sleepy grin. "Dad." The word washed over Michael like a warm wave. Dad. So simple, so profound. He kissed the boy's forehead, his son's forehead, and slipped out quietly. In Emma's room, she sat in bed, flipping through one of her favorite books. "Bedtime story," Michael offered, sitting beside her. Emma closed the book, looking at him seriously. "Do you think what I said really helped?" "In front of the judge." "Emma," Michael replied with complete sincerity, "you changed everything. It was the bravest thing I've ever seen anyone do." She smiled, proud but shy. "I just told the truth. The most important truth," he agreed, "that we are a family." Emma nodded, lying down and pulling up the blanket. Michael leaned in to kiss her forehead, but she surprised him by throwing her arms around his neck in a tight hug. "Good night, Dad," she whispered in his ear. Michael held her for a moment, allowing the full weight of it to settle. "Good night, my daughter." Later, alone in his study, Michael reflected on the journey that had brought him here. 6 months ago, he was a man whose worth could be measured by numbers, whose relationships were mostly transactional, whose life was organized around acquisitions and mergers. On his desk, where once there had been only spreadsheets and contracts, now lay colorful drawings, thank you notes from school, and a framed photo. Michael, Emma, and Noah at a picnic in the park, all smiling in the golden evening light. He picked up the photo, tracing their faces with his fingers. How could he have known, on that day at the bakery, that a request for bread would change his life so completely? How could he have imagined finding the meaning he'd sought all his life, not in professional victories, but in the trusting eyes of 2 children? Michael Carter, the ruthless billionaire who built an empire from nothing, finally understood what truly mattered. Not the amassed fortunes, the buildings bearing his name, or the power he wielded in financial circles. It was the privilege of hearing Noah call him Dad while drifting to sleep. It was the honor of earning Emma's hard-won trust. It was the chance to be the person these 2 souls needed him to be, not perfect, not infallible, just present, truly present. The next morning, Michael woke up earlier than usual. Instead of checking emails or stock prices, he went down to the kitchen and, with Margaret's help, began making breakfast. "Pancakes?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Noah's favorite," Michael confirmed. "And fresh orange juice for Emma." When the children came down, still in pajamas and with messy hair, they found the table set and Michael waiting for them. "Good morning, Carter family," he said, flashing a wide grin. Emma and Noah exchanged glances before smiling back. They sat down, and for the first time there was no rush. No fear the food would run out. No anxiety about what came next. There was only the present moment. 3 people whose paths had crossed by chance, or maybe by something more, finally finding one another. "More pancakes, Noah," Michael offered, holding the plate. "Yes, please, Dad," the boy replied, his eyes shining with happiness. "Emma, would you like to read that new book to us after breakfast?" Michael asked. She nodded, smiling over her glass of juice. "Yes, Dad." Michael Carter, Emma Carter, and Noah Carter. A family, a home, a place to belong, at last. The value of a loaf of bread, priceless.